My name is Grace Whitmore. I'm 28 years old. Last night, my father shouted, "Get out!" Then he threw my suitcase onto the lawn. Rain poured as I scrambled to pick up my things. Books, shoes, a photo of my mother. He slammed the door without another word. I slept in my car behind the art gallery. Windows fogged, clothes soaked, heart numb. I didn't even have a charger. My phone died sometime after midnight. As I lay curled in the passenger seat, I stared at the roof and whispered, "How did we get here, Dad?" He used to tuck me in with bedtime stories. Now I was nothing more than a burden. But this isn't just a story about being thrown away. It's about what happened next, because 24 hours later, I unlocked the gates to a $45 million villa in Florida, and that was only the beginning. I wasn't always unwanted. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside of Chicago, two-story home, red shutters, a swing in the backyard. My mother, Margaret, filled the house with color, watercolors drying on the kitchen table, fresh bread, warm hugs. My father, Walter, was the opposite. Bank manager, neat ties, clean rules. He measured love in achievements. My brother James made him proud. Harvard, finance, big titles. Dad called him a real man. I liked books, museums, old paintings. I studied art history, helped at a local gallery. Dad called that a nice hobby. He tried to be patient at first, but I knew I would never be enough. After Mom died, something in him froze. The warmth left. The silence stayed. He filled it with order, not love. And I just kept shrinking to fit. Until one day, I didn't fit at all. And that's when the cracks truly began. But it wasn't just him anymore. Someone else was moving in. Her name was Veronica Blake. Dad met her at some work event. She had perfect teeth, soft voice, a gold bracelet that clinked when she poured tea. At first, I thought she was just polite, maybe a little too polite. But then things started to shift. She moved in fast, took over the kitchen, rearranged drawers. I couldn't find anything anymore. She smiled at Dad, laughed at his jokes. But when he wasn't looking, her eyes turned cold. Once she touched my shoulder and said, "That gallery must be so fulfilling for someone with modest goals." She made it sound like a compliment, but it left a sting. Bit by bit, my space shrank. She replaced family photos with bland art, paved over Mom's garden for parking. Dad didn't notice, or didn't care. He started repeating her words, said my art degree was a mistake, that I needed to be practical. It felt like I was disappearing one memory at a time. Dinner used to be quiet. Now it felt like judgment. Veronica would sip her wine slowly, then bring up life goals or financial responsibility. Dad would nod, even when her comments were sharp. He started asking Grace, "When will you find a real career?" I'd stare at my plate. Same meal, different weight. He used to say, "As long as you're happy, I'm proud." Now, he just said, "Happiness doesn't pay the bills." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just cleared the dishes and went back to my childhood bedroom, the one that felt less and less mine. That week, I got a letter. A trust from my grandmother had matured. $10,000. Not life-changing, but it gave me hope. I could finally save for my own place. I didn't tell them, but somehow they found out. And that's when things turned from uncomfortable to unlivable. At dinner, Veronica smiled wide, too wide. "Grace," she said sweetly, "now that you've received that windfall, we think it's a time you contribute." Dad didn't look at me. He just nodded. "We were thinking $800 a month." I blinked. 800. That was almost everything I had. "Dad," I said gently, "I was hoping to save." "You're an adult living in this house," he cut in. "Adults pay their way." I wrote the check, left it on the counter. That night, I stared at the ceiling. The walls around me weren't mine anymore. The air was heavier. I was a guest in the house I grew up in, a paying guest. The next day, I came home early from work, head aching, heart tired. I opened my bedroom door and froze. Veronica was inside, going through my dresser. She looked up calm, unapologetic. "Just organizing. This house needs systems." She didn't even pretend to be sorry, and I finally broke. I stood in the doorway, gripping the handle. "My room doesn't need your systems," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She folded a pair of my socks, then looked me straight in the eyes. "This is Walter's house," she said softly, Every room is our concern. I felt my chest tighten, not from fear, but from the way she erased me so effortlessly. That night she told Dad I was disrespectful, said I needed to show more appreciation for all she does. He nodded, didn't ask my side, didn't even glance at me. I barely touched my food at dinner. And when I reached for my mom's old jewelry box later, I noticed something. Empty. Her pearl necklace gone, the silver bracelet missing, and the earrings she wore every birthday vanished. I went to Veronica. Careful, quiet. Have you seen my mom's jewelry? She smiled like it was nothing. Oh, sweetheart, your father gave them to me. He said Elizabeth would have wanted it that way. My hands started shaking. I knew that was a lie. I stood in the doorway gripping the handle. My room doesn't need your systems, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She folded a pair of my socks, then looked me straight in the eyes. This is Walter's house, she said softly. Every room is our concern. I felt my chest tighten, not from fear, but from the way she erased me so effortlessly. That night she told Dad I was disrespectful, said I needed to show more appreciation for all she does. He nodded, didn't ask my side, didn't even glance at me. I barely touched my food at dinner. And when I reached for my mom's old jewelry box later, I noticed something. Empty. Her pearl necklace gone, the silver bracelet missing, and the earrings she wore every birthday vanished. I went to Veronica. Careful, quiet. Have you seen my mom's jewelry? She smiled like it was nothing. Oh, sweetheart, your father gave them to me. He said Elizabeth would have wanted it that way. My hands started shaking. I knew that was a lie. A few days later, a letter came, thick envelope, stamped from a law firm in Florida. I didn't know anyone there, assumed it was junk, tossed it in my desk drawer unopened. At that point, I was barely sleeping. I stayed late at the gallery, spent weekends at Lily's apartment, just to avoid going home. Dad was colder, Veronica louder. The house no longer felt like mine. Every meal became a test. Every silence an accusation. One evening, I came home early. Head pounding, heart heavy. I walked into the kitchen and stopped. They were talking about me. I'm worried about Grace, Veronica said, her voice soft, calculated. Living at home at her age? It's not healthy. She's saving money, Dad replied, but his tone wavered. Is she? She whispered. I never see her help with anything, and that gallery job, it's more of a hobby than a real career. I stood frozen in the hallway. She was rewriting my life, and he was starting to believe it. That night I couldn't eat. Her voice still echoed in my head. Hobby. Dependent. Not contributing. I had $10,000 from my grandmother's trust. It was meant for a fresh start, my own place. Maybe classes in art authentication? Instead, at dinner, Veronica leaned in. So now that you've come into some money, Walter and I think it's fair you start helping more. She said it sweetly, but the knife was in the words. $800 a month would be reasonable, she added, sipping her wine. Dad nodded. Didn't even look at me. I tried to speak, but he interrupted. You're an adult now, Grace. It's time to act like one. So I wrote the check, left it on the counter, and something inside me dimmed. I wasn't saving. I wasn't building. I was stuck paying rent to live in a place that no longer wanted me. I thought it couldn't get worse, but I was wrong, because 1 week later, I came home early and found her in my room again. She was going through my drawers, hands deep in folded clothes, calm, like she belonged there. What are you doing? I asked, standing in the doorway. She didn't flinch, didn't apologize, just organizing. The house needs better systems. I stepped in. My room doesn't need your systems. She turned slowly. Smile gone. This is Walter's house, Grace. And that means it's our room too. I wanted to scream, but instead I walked away, quiet, shaking. That night, she told Dad I'd been hostile, said I disrespected her, and once again, he believed her. But something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep swallowing her lies, so I started watching. And a few days later, while helping Ms. Harper with gallery finances, I saw a name pop up on a transfer record. Veronica Blake, $25,000 wired from an account under Walter Whitmore. It wasn't joint. It was hers alone. My hands went cold. This wasn't just control, this was theft, and I knew I needed proof, and I needed it fast. I left the gallery early, heart racing, mind spinning. Back home, I waited for her to leave, then went to Dad's office. Top drawer locked, but I'd seen him open it before. I knew where he kept the spare key. Inside, I found bank statements, neat stacks, labeled folders, one marked personal, savings. I flipped through, transfer after transfer, all to Veronica. Amounts varied. $5,000, 12 by years, 18 tomorrow's years, over $100,000 in just 4 months. I took photos of every page, every detail, just in case. That evening, she came home with shopping bags, designer shoes, new perfume. I waited until we were alone in the kitchen. I held up my phone. I know what you're doing. She blinked, then smiled. Cool, controlled. Walter and I are planning for our future. These are retirement investments. He knows everything. I hit record. Voice steady. Then you won't mind if I ask him myself. Her smile dropped. Her voice dropped lower. If you show him anything, he'll choose me over you. And the worst part, I believed she was right. She stepped closer, voice colder now. Walter is tired of supporting you, Grace. You chose a useless degree. You play with art while real adults build real lives. I stayed silent, recording every word until she lunged, snatched the phone from my hand, deleted everything. Photos, voice memo. You little fool, she hissed. Know your place. I stood there shaking, my hands empty again. I'll go to the bank, I said. They have records. You can't erase everything. She stared at me, hard, cold, then smiled, a slow, threatening smile. We'll see about that. I went upstairs, tried to calm my breath, planned to get those papers tonight, but when I came down an hour later, she was sitting on the couch, a bruise on her cheek, one that hadn't been there before. What happened? I asked. She looked away, didn't answer. When Dad came home, she started to cry. I was just trying to help Walter. She hit me. My teacup dropped to the floor. She was framing me, and it was working. I rushed into the living room. She's lying, Dad. I never touched her. Veronica sobbed harder, makeup running. The bruise darker now, too dark. She flew into a rage, she said. I never thought she'd actually hit me. Check your accounts, I pleaded. She's been stealing from you. Over 100,000. Enough, Dad shouted, his face, red eyes blazing. Veronica told me you might try something like this. My voice cracked. Just look in your desk. The bank statements. She already showed me, he snapped. She said you hid them. I froze. Of course, she had time to destroy the evidence. I can't believe this, he said, voice shaking. You'd accuse her of theft, of abuse. Dad, please, get out. His words were sharp, not shouted this time, but cold, final. Pack your things and get out tonight. I stood there in silence, then turned away, each step heavier than the last. Outside, rain hit the ground like broken glass. And just like that, I had no home. He followed me upstairs, watched as I shoved clothes into a bag, didn't say a word. When I reached for Mom's last necklace, he stepped between us. Leave it, he said. It belongs to the family. I am family, I whispered. Not anymore. 2 words, but they shattered something in me. I carried my suitcase down the stairs, books under one arm, shoes in a grocery bag. Veronica stood by the door, hand resting gently on his shoulder, satisfied. The rain outside was heavy now, cold, unforgiving. Dad tossed the rest of my things onto the lawn. My laptop bag, a stack of drawings, neighbors peeked through windows. No one came out. I packed what I could into my car, the back seat soaked with my life. Then I drove. Nowhere in mine, just away. That night, I parked behind the gallery, reclined the seat, and cried until I couldn't anymore. I had no charger, no signal, no plan, only a broken heart and silence. Rain tapped the roof of my car, soft at first, then steady. I curled under my coat, shivering, numb. I had never felt so small, so invisible. By morning, my phone was dead, my mouth dry, eyes swollen. I slipped into the gallery's back entrance, used the staff bathroom to wash my face, brushed my teeth with a spare toothbrush in my purse. When Ms. Harper walked in, she stopped. Her expression changed from confusion to concern. Grace. What happened? I couldn't speak. My voice cracked. Tears came before words. She didn't ask again, just handed me a coffee. "You're staying with Lily," she said firmly. No arguing. Lily arrived within the hour. She didn't ask questions either. She just hugged me tight, then helped move my bags to her tiny apartment. Her kindness undid me. Because it didn't come with rules, or rent, or shame, just care. That night, while unpacking, I found the unopened envelope, the one from Florida, and this time I opened it. The letter was formal, thick paper, crisp font. It read, "Ms. Grace Whitmore, you've been named the sole beneficiary of Frederick Whitmore's estate." My heart skipped. Frederick Whitmore. Mom's uncle. A name I'd only heard in passing. He had moved to Florida decades ago. Estranged from the family, Mom used to say he chose art over duty. They never forgave him. I barely remembered him. But here he was, leaving everything. To me. The letter listed an estate. A villa in Palm Beach, art collection, investments, total value $45 million. I stared at the number. It didn't feel real. It felt like a mistake. A man I'd never met had been thinking of me, watching from a distance why there was a name at the bottom. Edward Sinclair, attorney. He asked me to call, said travel would be arranged, said Mr. Whitmore had made special provisions. I looked around Lily's apartment. My duffel bag, the folded couch, the quiet safety, and in my hand, a door to another life. The next morning I called. "Grace Whitmore," the voice asked. "This is Edward Sinclair. We've been trying to reach you." His tone was kind, warm, but formal. "Would you be able to come to Palm Beach? All travel expenses will be covered." I hesitated. I don't have anything to wear. I don't even have a suitcase." "That won't be a problem," he said. "Your great uncle made sure you'd be taken care of." 24 hours later, I was on a plane, window seat, hair tied back, still wearing the same sweater I'd cried in. When I landed, a driver held a sign, "Miss Whitmore." The car was quiet, smooth leather, palm trees lined the roads, blue sky so bright it hurt my eyes. At the law office, Edward greeted me with a soft smile. Silver hair, gentle eyes. Before we get into details, he said, "I want you to know your uncle didn't choose you by accident." And that's when I felt it, the shift. Like something in the world had opened. Just for me. "He followed your life from afar," Edward said. "Your mother wrote to him for years." He slid a photo across the desk. An older man, silver hair, soft smile, standing in a gallery surrounded by light. He never married, had no children. But he knew about you, your art studies, your work at the gallery, even your college thesis. I felt tears rising. I hadn't known he existed. But somehow, he'd known me. "He saw himself in you," Edward added gently. "Your choice to follow art despite the pressure. He admired that." I looked down at the photo. His eyes looked familiar, gentle like Mom's. "For years," Edward continued, "he prepared this estate for you, not just as an heir, but as someone who would understand it." He opened a folder. Inside, a copy of the will. My name clear in bold print. "Grace Whitmore, sole beneficiary." My voice barely worked. "This is real," Edward nodded. "As real as your great-uncle's love for beauty, and for you." A car waited outside the law office. Edward handed me a set of keys. "And a single line, your uncle called it your home. Long before today." We drove along a quiet road, gated estates, flowering trees, open skies. Then we turned. The villa appeared like a painting, Mediterranean style. Terracotta roof, ivy on stone, a curved driveway lined with palms. At the door stood a woman in her 60s, gray-streaked hair, warm eyes. She smiled gently. "Welcome home, Miss Whitmore. I'm Clara, your uncle's housekeeper." She opened the door, and the world changed. Marble floors, a crystal chandelier, sunlight streaming through tall windows, paintings on every wall, not prints, originals. I stopped in front of one. "Is that a Monet?" Clara nodded. He called it his morning sunshine. Each step I took felt impossible. Too grand, too beautiful, too far from sleeping in my car. Clara touched my arm. "Your uncle kept the East Wing just for you. He never met me. But he made space for me, as if he'd always known I'd arrive." Clara led me upstairs. The hallway opened into a sweet, soft light ocean view, everything quiet and calm. This was always yours, she said. He had it redone 5 years ago when he learned you studied art history. I ran my hand across the bedspread. Silk, pale blue, the color of peace. The closet was bigger than my bedroom back home. The bathroom held a soaking tub framed by windows facing the sea. This is too much, I whispered. Clara smiled. He said you'd say that. He wanted you to feel ready, not just welcome. For a moment, I stood still. The air smelled like lavender and salt. This was the first space in years that hadn't asked me to shrink. On the far wall, a painting I recognized. It used to hang in a museum where I interned. He'd bought it, hung it here. I turned to Clara. He really prepared this. For me. She nodded. Not just prepared, Grace, he hoped. Every day, until the end. Clara took me down a quiet hallway, past tall windows and carved wood doors. She paused, then opened 2 double doors. This was his heart, she said softly. It was a gallery, inside his home. Once a ballroom, now filled with light and stories. Original pieces lined the walls. Impressionists, Renaissance sketches, contemporary works placed beside ancient pottery. Each display, deliberate. Each piece, alive. He didn't collect for wealth, Clara said. He collected for meaning. In one corner, a table with leather-bound journals. Neat handwriting, dates, places, and thoughts written in the margins. He wrote about every piece she added. The story behind it was as important as the art itself. I flipped one open. A note beside a small bronze sculpture reminds me of her hands steady searching. Was he writing about Mom, about me, or both? I didn't know yet. But I felt it. This room wasn't for show. It was a conversation. Between him and someone he hoped would one day understand. Now that someone was me. Clara showed me to the study. Dark wood shelves, worn leather chairs, a place for quiet thought. On the desk, 2 folders, one labeled Elizabeth, one labeled Grace. My mother's letters were inside, dozens, some handwritten, some typed. She had written to him for years, told him about me, my drawings as a child, my college acceptance, my first gallery job. In the other folder, clippings from local papers, a program from my senior exhibit, a gallery flyer with my name in small print. He had kept everything, every scrap, every sign I existed. I sat down, hands trembling slightly. I had never felt this seen. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was history, a bond I never knew I had. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to prove I belonged. I simply did. No conditions, no judgment, just love stored quietly in paper, ink, and intention. He didn't just leave me a house, he left me a place in his story. And now I could begin writing my own. The days that followed were slow and soft. Morning sunlight spilled across the marble floors. Clara made coffee just the way I liked it, no instructions needed. We talked in the kitchen about Uncle Frederick, his routines, his quiet generosity. He read 3 newspapers a day, she said, smiling. He believed understanding the world was a form of respect. I wandered the villa, room by room, not rushing, just breathing. I hadn't realized how much I needed stillness. Not silence, but stillness. I visited local galleries in the afternoons, introduced myself simply as Grace. No last name, no title. At the Norton Museum, I met Elaine Monroe, curator of modern collections. We talked about Georgia O'Keeffe and how white space can say more than color. You know your stuff, she said. Do you work in the field I used to? I replied. Still not sure how to describe this new life, but something in me was shifting, not just recovering, becoming. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. As April turned to May, the air grew warmer. Soft winds, salt in the breeze. I began each morning in the gallery wing, reading Uncle Frederick's journals, learning why each piece mattered. His words weren't just notes, they were lessons. Some were deeply personal, others philosophical, but all of them pointed to one thing. He believed in art as a way to reach people, to heal them. In the afternoons, I walked through town, noticed how many people passed beauty without seeing it. A thought kept following me. What if I could open the collection just a little to those who'd never get to walk into a place like this, not for status, but for connection? The seed of an idea took root, a foundation, one that would support young artists, offer art education to students who couldn't afford it, Create access where there had only been walls, not just to honor Uncle Frederick, but to continue what he started. Quietly, intentionally, and maybe even better. I named it the Whitmore Foundation, a quiet tribute to him, to everything he saw in me before I saw it myself. I converted one wing of the villa into office space. Nothing fancy. Just clean desks, soft lighting, and shelves ready for vision. I met with local nonprofits, spoke with young artists, teachers, asked them, "What's missing? What do you wish existed for your students?" Their answers were clear. Access, support, someone who believed in their work. So I wrote the mission down to bring art to those who've never been invited in. Elaine introduced me to a team of advisors, smart, kind, people who understood both creativity and structure. We planned slowly, intentionally, no rush, no pressure to prove anything. This wasn't about impressing donors, it was about building something lasting. At night, I'd sit on the terrace, notebook open, ocean, whispering in the distance. I didn't need anyone's approval, not anymore. The life I was creating was finally my own, and it was just beginning. 3 months passed. The foundation took shape, room by room, idea by idea. I stayed quiet, no press, no social media. Only Lily and Ms. Harper knew where I was. They promised not to tell anyone. I changed my number. I wasn't ready to explain, not to James, and certainly not to my father. I needed space to think, to heal. But peace has a way of stirring old waters. One Tuesday afternoon, while reviewing designs for a small gallery space, my phone rang. Lily's name lit up the screen. "Grace," she said gently, "your brother called me." I didn't say anything. He saw an article, just a mention of the Whitmore Foundation. He put it together. My chest tightened. "What did you tell him?" I said, "You're okay. I didn't give your number or your address." "But Grace?" He sounded truly worried. I thanked her, hung up, and knew the quiet I'd built was starting to crack. And someone from my past was already on his way in. That evening, my assistant forwarded an email, subject line, "Please call me." It was from James. Short, careful. "Dad said you left after a fight, but I had no idea you disappeared completely. Please call me. We need to talk." No apology, no mention of what he dismissed, what he refused to see, just "we need to talk." I wrote 10 replies, deleted all of them. Finally, I typed, "I'm fine. Don't need anything. I'll reach out if and when I'm ready." I hit send and thought that was the end of it. A week later, Clara buzzed from the gate, her voice tense. "Miss Grace, there's a man and a woman outside. They say they're your father and his partner." Ice filled my chest. Veronica. My first instinct was to say no. Lock the gates. But something in me paused. Maybe it was Uncle Frederick's voice, the one I never heard but always felt. I told Clara, "Let them in. I'll see them in 15 minutes. I changed into a simple blue dress. Nothing flashy, but strong, quiet strength. 15 minutes later, I walked into the formal living room. Dad stood near the fireplace. Awkward. Hands clasped too tightly. Veronica hovered by a sculpture, eyes scanning everything, her smile too wide, too polished. "Abigail," she said sweetly, "this home is magnificent." Dad stepped forward. "Grace, we just wanted to see you, to know you're okay." I kept my voice steady. "As you can see, I'm fine." He looked around, gestured weakly. "This inheritance, this place, why didn't you tell us?" I met his eyes. "Before or after you threw me into the rain," he winced. Veronica jumped in. "All water under the bridge." "Darling, we're family. We should be celebrating your good fortune." Her words were soft, but the message was loud. I looked at Dad. "Why are you really here?" Before he could answer, Veronica smiled wider. "With all this, we thought we could help, manage it, guide you." And just like that, the truth walked in with them. Veronica moved closer, her tone smooth, almost rehearsed. "Walter has decades of financial experience, and I, as you know, specialize in wealth management." She touched the edge of a table, eyes locked on the Rodin sculpture. "All this responsibility, Grace, it can be overwhelming. We just want to support you. I kept my voice level. I already have financial advisors. Dad cleared his throat. Grace, I came to say, I'm sorry, I didn't handle things well. You didn't handle them at all, I said. You believed her lies. You turned your back on me. He looked down. Veronica jumped in again. Let's not dwell on the past. We're here now. We're family. Family. She used that word like it still meant something. I walked to the side table, picked up a remote. If we're talking about moving forward, I said, we should first address the past. Then I pressed a button. And the screen on the far wall came to life, because this time I had proof. Security footage filled the screen, clear, undeniable. There was Veronica. In my old bedroom, opening drawers, pocketing my mother's jewelry, her smile faded, her face drained of color. I turned to them both. The villa has full surveillance, inside, outside, every hallway. I had Clara ship my things from Lily's. When I found Mom's jewelry box empty, I asked my security team to look deeper. I clicked again. More footage. Veronica at jewelry stores in Boston, selling the pieces, one by one. Dad stared at the screen, mouth slightly open. Veronica, you told me Grace said you could have them. Veronica snapped. Oh, grow up, Walter. She wasn't using them. At least I appreciated their value. Their monetary value, I said. You never cared what they meant. Another click. Bank statements appeared, marked, highlighted, dates matching every transfer. 120,000, I said calmly. From your account into hers. Dad stepped back, silent, pale, and finally, the truth stood in the center of the room with nowhere left to hide. Veronica's eyes darted from me to the door, to Dad. He stared at her, the betrayal sinking in. You lied to me, he whispered. Again and again, her tone snapped, the sweetness gone. You ungrateful little bitch, she hissed at me. You had everything. A roof, a father who still babied you, and you threw it all away. I didn't move, didn't flinch. I worked for what I took, she went on. Because I'm smarter than both of you, she turned to Dad. You were an easy mark, Walter, so desperate to matter again. His face crumbled. No anger now, only disbelief. I picked up the house phone, pressed one button. 2 security guards stepped into the room. Escort her out, I said. The police in Boston have already been notified. Theft. Fraud. The stores gave statements. Veronica backed away slowly, still fuming, still calculating. This isn't over, she growled. It is, I said quietly, completely. And with that, she was gone. After the door closed, Dad sank onto the sofa. His hands trembled. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor. I've been such a fool, he whispered, his voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. I sat across from him, still, guarded. Why did you believe her? Why not me? He rubbed his face slowly. I was lonely, Grace. After your mother died, I filled the silence with rules, with work. When James moved out, you were still here, but it was like I didn't know how to reach you anymore. Veronica made me feel needed again. She gave me comfort, and I chose comfort over truth. He looked at me, eyes glassy. I'm sorry, for that night, for everything. I believed him, but belief doesn't erase pain. You broke something in me, Dad, that night in the rain. That wasn't just a mistake, it was a choice. He nodded slowly. I understand. Can we talk again sometime? Try to rebuild on your terms. I paused. Maybe I said, but not because of the house. Because of the truth. That evening, my phone lit up again. James. I let it ring once, twice, then I picked up. Grace? It's me. His voice was low, hesitant. I spoke to Dad. He told me everything about Veronica. Is it true, every word I said? No anger, just truth. He exhaled sharply. I should have listened. I dismissed you when you needed me. I didn't reply. I didn't want to believe it, he continued. It was easier to think you were just overreacting, that Dad had finally found someone good. Silence sat between us. I know, I can't undo that, he added. But I'd like to try again, not for answers, not for the foundation, just to be your brother. I thought of Uncle Frederick, how he'd let the past go but built something better from it. We can talk, I said quietly, but things don't go back. Trust doesn't reset overnight. I understand, James said, and this time I believed he did. Later that night, I walked through the gallery wing, quiet, dimly lit. The artwork felt like old friends. I stopped in front of a small landscape, soft hills, warm sky. Mom had loved this one. She once described it in a letter to Uncle Frederick, said it reminded her of home. Now it hung here, not in a vault, but on a wall where sunlight reached it every morning. I thought about James, about Dad, about how easily people fail each other, and how slowly trust returns. Uncle Frederick had lived a lifetime apart, but he hadn't turned bitter. He'd turned quiet, intentional. I didn't want to become someone who cut people out just because it was easier. But I also wouldn't bend myself just to be accepted again. This gallery, this life, was built from truth, from survival, from choosing meaning over approval. I touched the edge of the frame, still cool from the night air. Some pieces of the past were better left behind, but others deserved to be displayed. 6 months had passed. The villa felt different now. Lived in, loved. The gallery wing was ready, walls freshly painted, lighting adjusted to let each piece breathe. We called the opening exhibit Emerging Voices in American Art. 10 young artists, 10 stories worth telling. Students from local schools were invited first. They walked in slowly, eyes wide, whispers full of wonder. Some had never been inside a gallery before. Some had never seen original art, only blurry images in old textbooks. They asked real questions, not about price, about why. I watched from the corner, not as a curator, not as an heiress, just as someone who knew what it felt like to be unseen and what it meant to finally be welcomed in. Elaine stood beside me smiling. "Your uncle would be proud," she said. "I hope so," I replied softly. "But more than that, I hope they feel what I finally learned, that beauty belongs to everyone, and so does worth." The opening night was quiet. No champagne, no speeches, just open doors, soft music, and people who wanted to feel something real. The local paper ran a story, "Private collection opens to inspire young artists." No mention of the money, no mention of the scandal, just the mission, and that was enough. Behind the scenes, I was still healing. Therapy helped. Elaine recommended Dr. Coleman, a quiet woman with sharp eyes and a gentle way of asking hard questions. Each week, I unwrapped another part of the story. Not just Veronica, but Dad, Mom, myself. "Your worth isn't tied to what others approve," Dr. Coleman said once. "Not even the ones you love." That sentence stayed with me. It followed me on walks through the garden, into planning meetings, onto the gallery floor, because for so long I'd shaped myself around other people's comfort. Now for the first time, I was learning to take up space without apology, without fear, just fully quietly me. My father called on my 29th birthday. The line was quiet at first. "I've been thinking about what to get you," he said. "But what do you buy someone who has everything I waited?" Not out of coldness, just caution. "I found something," he continued, "in one of your mother's old boxes. A letter she wrote to Frederick. I never sent it." His voice cracked a little. I was angry at him back then, because he chose a different life. He paused. I realize now he chose the right one. The letter arrived the next day. Yellowed paper, familiar handwriting. Mom had written about my acceptance to college, how I lit up when I talked about art. She ended with, "She reminds me of you, Frederick. She sees beauty where others see waste. I hope you meet her one day." I framed it, hung it in my office, a bridge between stories, between choices, and maybe a step back toward the people who were finally learning how to see me. James visited twice that spring. No big gestures, just presence. He helped with some legal work for the foundation, asked real questions, listened to the answers. We laughed once, the way we used to, before pressure made everything quiet between us. He didn't bring up the past much, and I didn't need him to. Some healing happens in the showing up, not the explaining. Dad came down a month later. He looked older, smaller, but somehow lighter. We walked along the beach at sunset, no rush, no speeches. He said, "I always pushed you toward safety. I thought practicality would protect you from pain." I nodded. "I understand now. You were trying to give me armor, but I needed air." He smiled. "Tired but real. I'm proud of what you've built, Grace. Not because it's big, but because it's you. And for the first time in years, we stood side by side, not as father and child, but as two people still learning how to love without fear. Veronica pled guilty. Fraud, theft. She took a deal, probation, restitution, and community service. The court uncovered a pattern. Multiple states, different names, always the same script. But I didn't follow the case closely. I didn't need to. Her power over me had ended the moment I stopped chasing her approval. I focused on the foundation, on the lives we were reaching, on the students who walked into the gallery and saw something that made them feel seen. I started dating again, slowly. His name was David Langston, an architectural preservationist I met at a Palm Beach event. He didn't care about the inheritance or the headlines. He listened. He asked. He never tried to reshape me. "You've created something remarkable," he said, walking through the exhibit one evening. "It honors your uncle, but it's completely your own." And in that moment, with soft music playing and paintings glowing under warm lights, I realized this wasn't the end of my story. It was the first chapter I'd ever written by choice. The grand opening drew over 200 people. Educators, artists, critics, students. But what moved me most wasn't the praise. It was seeing young eyes lit up in front of the same paintings that once gave me a reason to keep going. A month later, I flew to Boston to thank Miss Clara and Jane properly. The city felt smaller, less heavy, like it no longer held power over me. Dad had moved, a small condo now, closer to the ocean, he said. He sent me a letter. Enclosed was Mom's last note, one she'd written to Uncle Edward but never sent. She wrote, "She reminds me of you, Edward. She sees beauty where others see impracticality. I hope someday you meet. I think you'd understand each other instantly." I framed it, hung it in my office. A reminder. Sometimes family finds you later. Sometimes healing comes after the storm. And sometimes the most painful endings are really quiet beginnings of a life built not on approval, but on truth and belonging. At last, if this story touched something in you, a memory, a wound, or a quiet hope, I'd love to hear it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters here. And if you'd like to walk with me through more stories like this, stories of healing truth and quiet strength, hit the subscribe button. There's more to come, and you're always welcome here.